Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas. And this time we see the little numbers, so we're actually on audio.
Yes, we just had a false start on this episode, so we're going to try it again.
Okay.
You guys don't know that, though. But anyway,
Right.
All right. So today we're going to talk about happiness, your moral obligation to your kids.
That's right. And I don't mean your kids' happiness.
You mean your own.
I mean, yes, a lot of people think that they have to do everything. They have to jump through hoops and crawl over broken glass to keep their kids happy.
Well, we do want our kids to be happy.
Yes, we do want them to be happy. And what's funny is sometimes you can help your kids be happy by not paying so much attention to them.
Well, the other thing that happens, and this is just a kind of little bit of a side note, but the other thing that happens, I think, is that if you're constantly sacrificing your happiness for your children learn that that's what other people should do for them all the time.
Right. Right.
And that's a problem.
That's
Trust
called
me,
having spoiled children.
We have kids that are 32, 28, 19, and 18, and trust me, this will eventually be a problem for you.
Right. Right. And children can sometimes make a parent miserable.
Right.
Well, we don't want that.
No.
Because there's lots of joy and happiness to be had in parent-child relationships. But what too often happens in the divorce context is that the child learns that their happiness is a way of controlling their parent.
Right.
And if you're controlled by your kid, you're not going to have a happy life.
Right. Well, and neither is your kid. Frankly.
And neither is your kid.
And you're going to raise a self-entitled brat.
That's right.
And what happens is, when the children have the ability to manipulate the parents in that way, then, again, what happens is we have the tail wagging the dog, and you hear me say that a lot. And I think eventually, what comes to happen is that type of relationship duplicates in the child's life. And the problem is that when you go through a divorce, especially, or a separation, whatever, from the other parent, and especially if that happens really young in the child's life, based on mine and Thomas's experience, I kind of feel like part of the problem is you have no frame of reference. Right. So when you start having trouble with your kids, or they don't like you, or they become early teenagers, or whatever happens, you start feeling like, oh my goodness, my children don't like me and they like the other parent.
Right.
But really, and I know this because my oldest was 15 by the time I went through the divorce, and he didn't like me or his dad at that point.
Yeah.
And he continued on and didn't like me and Thomas for a long time and all that kind of stuff. That's a normal, natural teenage progression. And so now when we're kind of in that stage with Thomas's kids, it's like they do live at their mom's half the time, but we also know that that's just a normal thing. And I think sometimes when you haven't had, if you divorce when the kids are really young and you haven't had that experience, it can feel like you must be doing something wrong because your children are unhappy. Your teenagers or your older kids are unhappy.
So your teenager says to you, I hate living here. And I say to him, I do too. What are we going to do about that?
Who should we call about that? That's a line from Revo. We've been watching reruns this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and a lot of times, you start feeling like, or they'll say something worse, like, well, I hate living here. I'm going to my mom's, or going to my dad's, or whatever, the other parents, and then that really cuts us to the quick, right? And no matter which side of that you're on.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of times, parents, like, I think particularly in divorced and broken, relationships, that what happens is you start to try to feel like you have to make up for that, or you have to shift that in some way.
Right. And then if they can see you sweat, because they know they can smell fear.
They do.
And they exploit it for their own nefarious ends. Now, I love my kids. I do. I adore them. But if I put their happiness first, in an odd way, I'm making them unhappy.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because when I'm miserable, and let's face it, practicing law is not an easy way to make a living in a lot of ways. It's very emotionally difficult particularly in the family law setting.
Right. A lot of days we're exhausted at the end of the day.
Yeah, the burnout rate is tremendous.
Mhm.
And I have found personally, and I think it's true for most people, that you need to do some stuff for yourself.
Right.
You can't sit back and let your children's condition, their mental condition, destroy your happiness.
Right.
And paradoxically, when you're having fun, that is contagious.
Right.
That affects them, and it raises the tone in your home.
Right. And we need for our children to see us being resilient, being happy, being positive, overcoming the negatives and the issues from the other parent, and all these different kinds of things. They need to see us modeling those behaviors, because again, it's not just about, I'm going to sacrifice my happiness for my children's. It is, sometimes life's hard. Sometimes it's, sometimes you're grief stricken. Sometimes you're anxiety stricken. Sometimes you're stressed out, burnout, like the whole thing.
Sometimes your ex is being a monkey's butt
and driving you insane.
Yeah.
And so, I don't think that we should be teaching kids that, I'm going to constantly sacrifice and make you happy all the time. No, sometimes things are good in life and sometimes things are bad, but you can always choose the positive aspect of things.
Right.
And it's interesting because, you may be watching this on YouTube and, on our YouTube channel. And I can't tell you how frequently we have comments. I mean, go back and look. You can see what's on there. How often we have comments about how much we laugh or how much we joke or, things of that nature. And it's kind of like, we've both been through this. It's not that we don't know how hard it is. We are pretty far removed from it at this point. So we are able to look back on it and have a sense of humor. But honestly,
16 years worth of it.
Well, this year's 17.
This is the 17th year. So it's 16 years.
But not just divorce. Yeah. I mean, I lost my mom. We've gone through different difficulties and trials as everybody does.
Right.
And so if you can't learn to keep your sense of humor intact and almost, appreciate the humor in the irony of how absurd life is sometimes,
it can be. Yes.
Then you're gonna drive yourself nuts, and you're gonna be a person that nobody wants to be around because
that's right. And you won't have any friends, and you'll attract crap into your life.
You'll attract crap because that's what
that's the law of attraction.
It really is. It really is. And I can tell you, I mean, I've told this story. I know I told this story in a recent episode. But, I remember going into the therapist's office at the beginning before my ex-husband ever moved out or whatever. And I said, my boss is a, butt.
Monkey's butt.
Yeah, my ex-husband's a butt, blah, blah, all these
people. When I say
people.
monkey's butt, I'm trying not to say a-hole.
Right. And all these people in my life are a butt. And she goes, well, why do you keep surrounding yourself with butts? She said a-holes, but why do you keep surrounding yourself with these people? And it was like, I had to take a cold, hard look at my own self and how my behavior and my interaction and my reactions were impacting what I was drawing into my life.
Right.
And that's really what the root of this is. If you're happy, you're going to attract more happiness, more positive people. The happiness will rub off onto your children.
True.
They'll learn how to be happy. They'll learn how to have positive, happy friends. And when we say happy, we don't mean that there's just some magical fairy dust you can sprinkle and
That's
you're
right.
just
or drugs.
And you just have no problems. It's not that you don't have problems.
More alcohol.
Yeah. It's that you're choosing to view things in a positive way.
That's
no matter what's going
right.
on.
That's right. You are trying to always see the glass half full.
Right.
Always see the glass half full.
Right.
So here's some tips. We
were hoping you were going to give us some tips because it's like well, all this sounds just great.
Yeah,
How
just
the
be
heck-
happy.
How the
Whatever
heck am
it
I
is.
supposed to do that?
Okay.
I live with you. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
All right. If you're separated or divorced or post judgment or whatever, the number one thing I think you can do to enhance your own happiness is to take your focus off your ex.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And this is a big problem, especially you fellow moms out there. This is a big problem because these are our babies.
Yeah.
And we get hyper focused on what's going on in the other parent's world, not because we care about the other parent necessarily all the time, but we care about what is happening to the
Right.
children when they're with the other parent. And, you know, this falls under God grant me the serenity.
To accept the things I cannot change.
Right. Because
Let me say something about dads too,
Okay.
because dads, you know who you are. You're trying to control things, okay? You want to make sure that the kids eat a healthy meal. You want to make sure that the place is not a godforsaken mess over at mom's house, and so our dads do obsess over the other world sometimes.
Well, I think both parents do, but
Yeah.
what happens is, and this can be either side of the coin. This isn't. I mean, the only point I was making about fellow moms is like it's your babies, and so I think women
Yeah.
have a harder time letting go as a whole most of the time. But here's the thing: whether you're mom or dad, usually one of us is kind of the stable one in the relationship, and the other one of us not so much. At
Right.
least in these high conflict. This is what we see in
Right.
the high conflict relationships. Is most of the time one of you is the one keeping it all together,
Right.
and the other one is the one that's like just whatever and going with the flow.
Right.
And so the person that keeps it all together and controls it all, that's their way of dealing with the world. And the other person's way is just like letting everything happen that happens. And that controlling person wants to control the other side.
Right, and also I think for guys, a lot of the pain is around what they perceive as alienation,
Right.
or negative, and you can't control that.
No.
In the final analysis, you can't control what your ex says to your kids,
Right. Right.
but you can control having an inviting, warm, happy home.
Right. And
Even if you have a studio apartment, you can do that.
yes, no matter what it's not about the finances.
Right.
You can find ways to make it fun and do those things. I mean, you and I
For yourself, though.
right.
I remember I was reading a book. I can't remember where I read this, but basically the person, if you want to influence somebody to like go out to a movie with you, you could go, oh, and I'm really depressed today, and I just really feel down, and I suppose a movie might be okay if you want to go, but if you don't, that's okay, kind of. And nobody's going to go to the movie with you.
I think that's not to criticize you, but I think that was kind of a bad example. But
You're a bad example. No,
I think the way it usually goes though is like,
or you want to go to a party.
okay,
Yeah.
or here's how it usually goes. I think like, okay, let's say husband comes home from a long day of work and wife wants him to take her to a movie, right? So she says, you never have any time for me. You don't pay attention to me at all. You work all the
You're
time.
right. That is a better
And then
example.
you come home in the evenings and you never take me anywhere. And, I arranged a babysitter and I did all this stuff and you don't even care and you don't even want to go or be with me.
Right. Versus, wow, I saw this trailer. It's a really fun movie. I think it'd be really romantic. I think we should go. What do you think?
Right. And so, and if you're an inherently negative person, I'll admit.
You notice
that's
that she
me.
did that very well.
Yeah, that's me.
You know,
that's
I
me.
couldn't even think of an example.
I know, because you're not negative. That's why I said, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to criticize, but that's not how it goes.
You don't know how to be negative.
That's right.
You idiot.
And so, but that's what happens is like, it's almost like this, darn it, you need to do this so I'll be happy. And the other person, that just repels them even more because they're thinking, I don't want to go spend time with this person that's complaining and, bitching at me and, whatever else. And so, and Thomas is exactly right. I mean, it's kind of a funny example, but, I've worked, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, like we all have our struggles, but I've worked really hard to try to retrain my brain in that area a lot. And I'm much, much better than I used to be. But Thomas will tell you from his firsthand knowledge that I'm definitely not free of that issue. And so like a few weeks ago, that actually did happen. I said, hey, I saw this really cute trailer. It looks like a really fun movie. I think we would both like it.
Right.
I'd like to watch it sometime in the next week together if we have an evening where we can do that. And so I didn't try to pinhole him in or whatever. And I wanted to watch it that night, but we ended up not because there wasn't enough
We watched
time.
it on Valentine's Day.
Whatever. Did we watch it on Valentine's Day?
We watched it on Valentine's Day.
Might have been. We might have stayed home and watched it on Valentine's Day. So anyway, because it was
I
a few
cooked a
days
meal.
before. You did cook for us on
Right,
Valentine's
but
Day.
she roped me into seeing a chick flick. That's what she did.
Because I made it sound so good.
Yeah, and that's a nice romantic movie. You might consider it. Make us feel romantic. And
but our intuition kind of goes. Like I said, if you're that negative person like me, your intuition kind of goes, you need to do this for me now.
Why can't you do anything romantic?
Right. You're never romantic. You don't bring me flowers. You don't cook for me.
What the heck's wrong with you?
He's probably not likely to come home with flowers the next night. Probably not.
Probably not. So by the same token, if you want your kids to like coming over into your world, you want to create a world that's inviting.
Right.
That's fun.
Right.
One of the things that Tammy said that her ex-husband did wrong.
One of the list, okay?
Is that he didn't keep any food in the fridge, right?
Well, yeah.
And he didn't have an Xbox for them to use and all the...
Yeah, he didn't have things that were, what we always tell the other parent, like if you're the parent that, when you separate, a lot of times one of the parents stays in the home and the other one will move out immediately or whatever. And so what you want to try to do is recreate in your world. I had a guy say to me a few weeks ago, Tammy, if I was your son and he was going through this, what would be the first thing you would tell him to do? And I said, duplicate the world. Have everything in your home. If they skateboard, you have a skateboard. If they surf, you have a surfboard. If they play baseball, you have bats and gloves and balls. If they play basketball, you have basketball.
Right.
Whatever it is, toothbrushes, clothes, underwear, you have a fully contained world where you don't need anything from the other home.
Right.
And so that's part of creating that world for them. I mean, it's nice if it's obviously, there's a certain level of cleanliness and organization and things that make a home pleasant to be in. But even if you're not, Marie Kondo, of course, like I'm not either, then you can,
Who?
She's an organization, the most of the moms will know who that is. But anyway, you can still create a nice environment.
Right. And that, by the way, is tip 2. I didn't mention that.
Yeah. And you could,
Tip 2 is create a beautiful space for yourself.
Oh.
Right. So
and the kids, but
right.
Yeah.
And the kids. But, if they come, if your teeth are on edge, and you hate the color of the walls and there's no plants in your house and it's just a livid mess, nobody feels comfortable in that environment.
I hate the color of our walls.
Yeah, I know. Well,
I hate the color of the wall behind us. If you're listening to this, go over to YouTube and look at the video. I hate the color of the wall behind. We're in our home doing this, and this was my project. I was going to paint this room when we had a leak a little over a year ago in our kitchen.
It looks like vomit, but it's not.
I don't like the color. Anyway, but yeah, it's better if you can have a nice, comfortable. It doesn't have to be fancy. It has to be comfortable. It has to have a place where they're not embarrassed to have friends over, especially if they're older. You want them to be able to have their own space in the house, and we tell people, even if you're in a studio starting out, make sure they have their own mattress to sleep on in the corner, and make sure that you do as much as you can to create that kind of environment. And then as you're planning for a bigger space or whatever, incorporate all that into your plans.
Right. And for me, I first of all, I love my new kitchen. Even though we haven't even put the floors in
Yeah,
yet.
it's not done.
It's still awesome. I mean, it's got space, you can walk around, and it just to cook, because I like to cook.
Right. You're the cooker.
And it increases my happiness.
Right.
And when I'm happy, I'm nice.
Yeah.
When I'm
Sometimes.
unhappy, I'm grumpy.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. So it's a gift that I give my family, that I enjoy my surroundings. And that kind of bleeds into my third tip, which is you got to do self-care. You got to do stuff for you. You know, I sit around feeling guilty sometimes that, you know, because I like our house and I like our neighborhood and I like living close enough to the beach so I can go surf and all that stuff. But, you know, we have put some effort into creating something that makes me feel good. And I have hobbies. And we have our friends that we go with. Mostly they're your friends.
Why is that?
I don't know, because I'm a bit of a homebody.
Yeah.
I admit it.
You're the introvert of the two of us.
I'm the introvert, but
Mhm.
but you have to do stuff for you. Like
Yeah.
if you don't have any hobbies, then get you a hobby.
Right.
You know, I always tell people to start surfing.
Yeah, that's
That's
your
my
hobby of choice.
go-to.
Yeah.
It's so healthy. It makes you feel good. Makes your lungs feel good.
The other thing that happens is, you know, I think we try to manage the other parent's relationship with the child sometimes.
Yeah,
And I think this is a big one because
that's tip 4.
yeah, I think that's a big one because when you see your child suffering because of choices or interactions with the other parent, or you know, and
Right.
you can't protect them from it. Like, it's really hard. I find this to be a big struggle for me, even now that my kids are adults. When I see them struggling in their relationship with their dad, it's hard for me. Like, I want to intervene. I want to say something. I want to step in. Most of the
Right.
time I want to say something to him. You know, it's kind
Or
of
beat his living
beat the
tushy.
living tar out of him. It's kind of interesting because I was having a conversation with a client earlier today, and she said that, you know, her child had said something along the lines of, "Well, you just need to, you know, do what dad said," or she was something about what dad had done or said or whatever that, you know, mom hadn't responded to or done whatever. And so I said, okay, well, how did you respond to that? And so she did pretty good at responding to the kid, whatever. I gave her a few little tips, tweaks. But then I said, did you say anything to dad? And she was like, yes. And so she sent dad a message saying, you need to not da 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 da.
Yeah.
And so and this gets into, and she's and in her defense,
Don't send any message that starts out with "you need to." Right?
well, I don't know if that's her exact words,
Yeah,
but
right.
you know,
I understand the tone.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
her defense, the issue was, well, he's talking to the child about inappropriate things that he shouldn't be putting the child in the middle of.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's true, but did the child say dad said? And she said no. Okay, well, we really don't know how the child came into this information. We don't know if she overheard it.
Right.
We don't know for sure,
It
although
could
we
be that-
highly suspect.
It could be that she's thought it up as a means to manipulate mom.
It could be, or it could be that she overheard something,
Right.
and she's trying to be a peacekeeper between her parents.
It's like
or,
that
you know.
Reba show where Kira tells a lie
Yeah.
about her little brother, and the her whole motive was to manipulate mom.
Right. So if you haven't watched Reba, they're in reruns. It's Reba McEntire, the country
Yeah.
singer, if you don't know who that is. And she has a show, and she's got 3 kids, and her middle daughter is about 12 or 13 years old. And dad had an affair. Brock is the dad's name, and he had an affair with somebody in his dental office,
his dental hygienist,
and
yeah.
they have a baby, and they're married, right? And they live a little bit down the street. And so, you know, mom asked the middle child, well, is it true that she gives your brother fast food? Because I've told her not to. And she said, yeah, she gives him fast food. And in fact, she didn't witness the stepmother
giving
fast food to the child. And when mom came back and asked her the second, because mom and dad started having an argument about it, and dad's like, it's not true. And then mom goes back in the kitchen to ask the middle child again, and the child's like, nope. And mom's like, what? And she's like, no, she doesn't give them fast food. And she's like, you just said she did. And she's like, I lied. Because it was like you said, her way of manipulating mom. And so what happens is this all kind of culminates, and mom and dad sit down on the couch, and mom says, look, I want to trust you with the kids, but I need to know what's going on over there. And then he says, okay, fair enough. But if you for every question you get to ask me, I get to ask you a question. And she says, fine. And then they start this whole Q&A of like, do you feed the kids candy before bed? Yes, that's my right as their father. Do you say negative things about my wife? Yes, I do. Do you? And they go back and forth, and it kind of escalates to the point where they go, you know what? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem. You're not going to agree.
Yeah.
You're not going to agree. So trying to manage that other parent's relationship with the child, that's their relationship. And even if you don't agree with what they're doing, you still have to be hands off and let the child and the parent navigate that.
I've got one word for you. Let it go.
Like that.
That's right.
Yeah. And I had one client say to me, you know what? That just seems like I'm throwing my child to the wolves. Like that feels really unfair, because here I'm asking this child to hold their own with this really, destructive parent.
You're making yourself miserable, though, by trying to control that. And you can't. If he's going to violate the court orders and say negative things about you to the kids, then he's going to violate the court orders. I mean, the court can't get him to stop.
Right.
What makes you think you can?
Right. Right. Because if they're that type of person, they're not about following the orders. They're about doing whatever they want to do.
Right.
And they've done that their whole life. Usually when we're dealing with people that are really high conflict and have different personality disorders, they're a person that's kind of gotten by on their charm in life.
Yes, that's true.
And that's
how I got by.
And that's what they believe they can continue to do. And so you have to step back long enough to let them self-destruct. And in my experience, I have not seen one yet that didn't.
Well, here's also, this is true, and you'll just have to take my word for it from all the years of experience that I've seen this almost uniformly, is that the parent that does let the stuff go and doesn't focus on the other world is a happier parent. And the kids are attracted to that.
Yes, that's the parent that ends up with the positive long-term relationship with the kid.
Right. And Dina Stacer used to tell me, because this is where I learned all this stuff from. And she
I wouldn't say all of it, but a lot of it.
A lot of it.
The foundational part.
Yeah. And well, this is how I got my start.
Right.
In family law. But she used to say, the kids will naturally be drawn to the healthier family.
Right. Right. And that's proven true pretty much across the board.
Right.
I mean, I can't even think of a case where that isn't true.
Right. And the parent that tries to alienate in that situation, that tries to manipulate the children and turn them against the other parent, will usually lose that battle unless that parent gets sucked into the conflict.
Right. And this is what happens is the parent that's trying to stop the damage, as they view it, from the other parent ends up looking like the crazy one to the court.
Right. That's
when
true.
Really it's the other parent. And what I always tell people is it's almost like you're metaphorically screaming in a way that causes them not to be able to hear the parent that's the problem.
Right.
And you gotta sit down and shut up.
Right.
Essentially.
And let them
show they're crazy.
Okay. So one more tip. Take time for yourself.
I thought that was your last tip.
No. Was it?
That's what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. It's listed as number 5 here.
I know, but we went out of order of your little cheat sheet.
Well, yeah. I want to emphasize it though. You can't rely on your children for your happiness.
Right.
Because they'll disappoint you.
You will definitely not be happy if you're relying on them.
That's right. And so many people make that mistake though. They put all their eggs in that basket.
Yeah.
You got to take a yoga class or
Meditate,
meditate.
read your Bible, pray,
Yeah, go to the beach and just watch the
spend
sun
time
go
with
down.
friends. Yeah.
Spend time with friends.
Go to a good concert.
Rock and roll.
Go to the spa. Get a massage. I got a whole list of these.
Go
You
see
wanna know
Rick
what to do?
Springfield.
Yeah, Rick Springfield.
That's right. We'll
Shout
give you
out
the-
to Rick Springfield if he's listening. I hope he's not listening. 'cause
Why
then he'd
on
get a
earth
divorce,
would Rick
but
Springfield be
I
listening
don't
to
know.
our
He wouldn't.
podcast?
He wouldn't. But if you know Rick Springfield, you can put in a plug for me. How's that? But whatever it is that makes you happy and makes you thrive, you've got to take the time to do that. And I think personally that's one of the benefits of being in a parenting plan is you do get some of that downtime. So when the child's with the other parent, instead of sitting around and fretting about what's going on in that world or what the other parent's doing, spend that time focusing on yourself and having some personal time
Right.
to rejuvenate and renew your own self. And then when your child returns, you're going to be so much better a parent, so much more present and focused and involved. And,
Right.
As Thomas always says, in custody, the relationship is king. And
That's
so if you're enabling yourself to build a stronger relationship with them through your own self-care, then you're helping you and your child.
There you go. Right. Your happiness will be infectious and attractive. And after all, who wants to be with a grump?
Right.
Nobody.
Nobody. Not even you.
Not even me. That's why I married you, Tammy. You're a ray of sunshine.
Oh my goodness. All right. So if you are listening to the podcast, please rate and review us and subscribe. It helps people find us, helps our rankings go up. And, I think that everybody needs a jolt of positivity if they're going through anything dealing with divorce or child custody issues. If you are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit like on this video and subscribe to the channel so you get notified as new episodes are released each week. And we will talk to you soon.
We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.